Welcome to this session of Straight Drive viewers. Namaskar, I am Sudhanshu Mani. Today we are here to talk about Indian Railways. As you are aware, Mr. Ashwini Vaishnaw, he has recently joined as the new Railway Minister. Retired IAS with experience in corporate sector, had been an entrepreneur also. He became later a member of the parliament in Rajya Sabha, and now, in a way, he has been catapulted to be the railway minister in addition to important ministries like IT and communications. Today, we have a panel of seasoned railwaymen, ex-railwaymen, but a railwayman is a railwayman for life. Please welcome Mr. P.N. Shukla, an officer of the Indian Railway Traffic Service, who retired as Director of Dedicated Freight Corridor. Welcome, Mr. Shukla.
Namaskar. Thank you.
And we have with us Mr. SK Luthra, a member of the Indian Railway Service of Mechanical Engineering. He retired as Chief Administrative Officer of the Diesel Modernization Works. Now it makes electric locos. Welcome, Mr. Luthra.
Thank you.
I'll begin by showing a couple of 3-4 slides just to set the tone, because there has been a lot of discussion about finances of IR. So, I hope you can see it on the screen. This is a simple comparison of the operating ratio, which is nothing but a ratio of the total working expenses and the gross earnings with expenses in the numerator. And usually, obviously, because your earnings must exceed the expense, it should be below 100, much below 100. And you can see that this has been going up. In recent years, we have also been seeing some jugglery of not contributing to PF and DRF and artificially keeping this operating ratio below 100. That's why I've shown you here the figures for 1920, both without contribution to PF and DRF and the one with likely contribution. And you would see that the actual operating ratio would be somewhere near 118. These figures have been taken from Budget at a Glance, and I will come back to the footnote of these official papers to show you something. You see, the footnote itself very candidly says that the operating ratio we are artificially showing as 96, 97, 98, and so on. But because of COVID, appropriation to PF and DRF has not been done. So actual operating ratio is in the range of 114 for 1920 and as high as 131 for 2021. So there is also some people who believe that we should not bother about DRF because there is a lot of capital expenditure which is being done. I don't agree with that logic, but anyway, and there are also some people who say that because our budget is now with the central government and it is a central government liability, our pension, so we should not be bothered about it. Okay. If we compare our simple earn to spend ratio without accounting for DRF and pension, you would see that there also our performance has really been very bad. In from say 65 to 75 in that range, we are now nearing 100 as had happened in last year, which was also a COVID affected year. Lastly, our working expenses are going up, as you can see in the slide. But our capex has also been going up. By this government, they have taken a decision to make big investments. And the capex now is in the region of 1,60,000 crores from something which used to be around 50,000 crore per year about 7-8 years back. Also look at the earnings. If you see the earnings for last 5 years, it is growing barely by 2%. With this, I will close this screen share and I'll quickly come to both of you to get your reaction, and then I will come to you to learn from you as to what should be the agenda of the new minister, because we have high hopes from this minister. So, Mr. Shukla, what do you think about these numbers that I just showed you?
It is a fact that our capex is going up and up in last 10 years, I would say, in a very substantial manner. Without correlating it with our projected earnings, and therefore in a way it has been eroding our business sense, I would say. We have been investing little, realizing that what is the purpose of investments brought. Sure. And therefore to bring purpose to the investment, we have to analyze two factors, that what is our presence in the business as a whole. If we take freight business, our share has been declining from last, at the time of independence, it used to be 90%, and now it is about 25%. So while capex is going up, but our share is going down. And why our share is going down despite such high capex, it should be a matter of concern for us. Because we keep on investing with the view that our earning coefficient, our coefficient of business in overall freight will be going up, which has really not happened. Yes. So we have to look back and analyze that where we have lost our way.
Right. I'll come back to you on this subject, especially about earnings. Mr. Luthra, so a quick reaction about these numbers, and then we go forward with the agenda that you proposed today.
Okay. Yes, I also wrote an article about the agenda for the minister, in which my first point was the negative OR being wrongly or falsely presented as a positive OR. I got many reactions to that. Some of them were that OR is now not at all relevant for Indian Railways, now that the budget is merged. And yes, a day will come when the PF liability and the pension liability will be borne by the central government. So we should not be really worried about that. So that is one part, but nevertheless, that does not answer the question as to why the railway should not be earning more and costing less. Yes. Being such a large organization, as Mr. Shukla said, we have to be earning more commensurate with what we are investing in. If we are building more and more infrastructure, it should result in more traffic movement and it should result in more revenue. Now, one can again argue that we are artificially keeping the fares down to keep the railways as a medium of transport for the poor people or for the movement of certain commodities which the nation wants to move in a subsidized manner. So even that I am willing to accept, but then it should at least have resulted in more traffic units being moved. If I stop looking at the OR, if I stop looking at the revenue, at least I must look at the traffic units being moved. Now there also the growth is very, very minimal. So that is what should concern the minister. And if he wants us to, or the nation to, ignore the economics of the movement, at least we should be moving more units. Even if, as Mr. Shukla said, we are not able to arrest the modal share decline, at least we should be able to maintain it. Even if we are not able to maintain that, at least we should have a reasonable growth, let us say 5 to 10% per year. Even that can be a very scaled down target to achieve. Even if that can be achieved, I think something would be achieved by this minister.
Thank you. So, okay, so there is a kind of consensus here, sir, that basically, I mean, we have social responsibilities, we are part of the general budget, but we must earn more than we spend, and substantially more than what we spend. So, looking at our freight and passenger business, our bread and butter, Mr. Shukla, what would you propose that the minister should concentrate on?
We have to think in short term and medium term for the minister, because as it is, we already have vision papers, etc., many times made. And those vision papers have remained just on paper. And therefore, we have to take a view that what in 1 year can be done and what in 3 years should be done.
I agree, sir. I'll stop you here. Exactly what I wanted to say, that let us be realistic. He is a politician with an eye to 2024 general election. What is it that the minister should do short term and medium term? Sir, go ahead, please.
So coming to the passenger business, I would say first, I will talk few points on passenger business. We have two areas which can be taken care of in short term. One is loss-making lines, and second is hill railways. This loss-making lines and hill railways need to be hived off. I'm not saying they should be closed. I'm saying that we should run them on PPP mode so that we can bring down our maintenance cost, and at least the business, our PPP partner can develop other businesses so that he can make it profitable in that sense. Because this loss-making lines would have land associated with it. It would have some other businesses associated with that area. So they can exploit those areas and perhaps curtail the loss-making portions in that area. And secondly, these hill tourism business needs to be hived off completely. And there are very popular hill businesses which we can run, which could be quite profitable. It may not look in short term, but in short term, we can completely knock off the losses. If we hive off those businesses, then we can bring investment from the private partner, and over a period of time, that business will become profitable. But immediately, we can bring down the losses which are on account of those lines. So in short term, two things: loss-making lines need to be hived off, and hill tourism can be made a separate unit of business, and that we can bring in partners into that area. This is about short-term passenger business. Long-term, many things we can think of, but I think that will be a long debate. So coming to the freight business, I would say it is a matter of concern that our modal share is going down despite having such a high capex in line capacity. Line capacity creation is directly related to objective of increasing the business share. So it's a matter of concern that why business should go down, why business should come. In fact, in general terms, we can think that the transportation is a derived growth, derived portion of GDP. And if the GDP growth is 6%, then 2% can be added into the derived addition. So there is no reason, if the GDP is growing on an average of 6%, why our transportation should grow less than 6%. And we can see that from 2015-16 onwards and to 2020, it has been our traffic has been only in the range of 1100 to 1200 million tons. It has not been 6 to 8%. So it's a matter of concern, and we are overlooking our capacity creation also, and therefore there is no justification that we should be losing our business. And now we have to think that why we are losing business ultimately. After creating capacity, why business is not coming to us. So that is the issue which has to be addressed. And there are two big trends which we have to take into account for business growth. One is the trend which is taking place in bulk business. In bulk business, we can see that the biggest component of our bulk business being coal and in earning terms, petroleum business. Coal is flattening because of renewable energy focus, and the growth will not be as much as we expect. Second is there is an alternative for petroleum business. There are pipelines available, and more growth takes place. The business will go through pipelines, and therefore we will be left out only with only three commodities, perhaps cement, fertilizer, and food grains. These only three commodities will be left to us for any significant movement, and therefore we cannot bank on bulk business disproportionately. And now the second part is the non-bulk business. Non-bulk business comprises, can be handled by railways in four different segments. One could be called container business. Container business, we have seen that the domestic container business has not really grown in last 20 years. It has remained in the area of 4 to 5% total business of railways. And therefore, it leaves a lot of things to be desired for growing the container business. The second aspect can be the alternative of roll-on, roll-off business. The third alternative in bulk business, in non-bulk business, could be parcel business. Fourth could be automobile business. Automobile includes both four-wheeler as well as two-wheelers, because two-wheelers is a very big segment which hardly used by rail. And therefore, we have to focus on these four areas, but there is a requirement for these areas. These areas require ultimately hub and spoke system of movement. They cannot be handled by transportation alone. Transportation will be one part. It will be along with other services also, by which these commodities, these products can be brought onto rail. And for this hubs, we need logistics parks. Like we need automobile movement, then parking is required for automobiles. If we need roll-on, roll-off business, then we need parking space for trucks, etc. And for some sort of maintenance, if we need parcel business, then we need some sort of warehouses for regrouping the parcels. And container business is, we know how it to be handled. And the multiple handling means that the cost has to be competitive with road. And therefore, these four businesses, if they have to be brought onto railway system, then we have to think of hub and spoke system of movement right from the beginning.
Right, sir.
And hub and spoke system cannot be handled by railways. And therefore, we need freight forwarders for handling this area of business, because it requires handling of packages, it requires handling of roll-on, roll-off services, it requires handling of parking, etc. It may require some other value-added services. So we require partners for handling these services, and therefore this traffic will come to us only when we move in a when we look complete view of this business, not part of this business.
Right, sir. So do you think, sir, Mr. Shukla, that as far as these logistics parks or multimodal hubs, as you say, railways can also plan them in PPP mode or leave it entirely to private sectors?
No, railway has to plan in core areas, and rest can be left to the businesses for PPP mode. Because we cannot be, one of the biggest requirement for logistics park is land. And there is a difficulty in land acquisition for private parties. They can perhaps acquire small portions of land, but once it requires bigger activity, then railways have to step in. Although the building of logistics park could be in PPP mode. Only thing is
Right.
land acquisition may have to be
Right.
done by railways.
Right. Thank you, sir. So, Mr. Luthra, you just heard Mr. Shukla. So he has covered a rather a big part about freight and passenger earning, but there are other issues. Perhaps you would like to talk about some of those issues which the
Yes.
minister must address. And again, in his 3 years that's remaining for his tenure, Mr. Luthra.
Yeah, before I come to these points, let me add a bit to what Mr. Shukla has said.
Yeah.
First, I will touch on the freight business. As we all know, about 5 years back or 6 years back, we started talking of beyond coal, realizing the reducing importance of fossil fuels in the world and our dependence on coal as our main commodity. So I was today morning looking at the figures of July 2021, the first 3 months figures. I compared them with July 19, the pre-COVID period, 2 years back. So I was very happy to see that we have seen a growth of 10% in the loading in the first 3 months this year compared to 2019. From 407 million tons to 452 million tons, a 10% increase almost. But the heartening part is that in this increase, there is hardly any increase in the coal traffic. The majority of the increase has come from iron and steel and raw materials for steel plants. Cement, each of them have contributed about 20% increase against overall 10% increase. Then container traffic, balance of goods traffic. These have contributed in good measure. So I think somebody should bring this to the minister's notice that we need to strengthen and build on this. And a 10% increase in overall traffic in 2 years is less than 5% per year. So that is not enough. And if these sectors are showing good growth, we should build on them. And whatever growth coal gives us, we should of course take. We know that some work has been done in automobile movement. Some very small part of the automobile traffic is now moving on rail. Container domestic, there are some good ideas floating around, dwarf containers. Somebody should look at them seriously. Parcel traffic, timetable parcel traffic in full rake loads, maybe using our old ICF stock, converting them into the NMGs, which are in great demand in the country. So taking a mission and flooding the market with NMGs so that more and more timetable trains, parcel trains can run. RoRo, as Mr. Shukla said, these are really areas where we need to build on, and the minister should be brought into his focus should be brought into this to build on this. On the passenger side, I am not a proponent of trying to increase passenger traffic too much. I think we should be happy to let passenger traffic move, especially short distance, to other segments. We should not be too much worried about that. We should concentrate on our profitable long distance and overnight sleeper trains. We need freedom from strict tariff rules. Where there is more demand, we should be able to charge more in long distance passenger train. Where there is less demand, we should be able to give more discounts. That way we attract more traffic, we earn more money. So apart from these ideas, in my article, I had touched on two other things. One was the need for internal management reforms, something which the previous minister attempted and failed. So he needs to look at that seriously. There is a lot of disillusionment within the cadre, as I believe. So he has to address that, take everybody along, and bring in a more united, stable, and synergetic railway board. The second is the structural reforms. He has to ask whether railways can continue to work as a department and an appendage of the finance ministry, or it needs to be corporatized. It can remain in government control, but give it more freedom, give it more relaxation in the rules and regulations by which it works. It cannot work like a ministry and hope to deliver to the country.
Okay, thank you. But when you say corporatization, you mean Indian Railways as a whole, or you are talking specifically of the manufacturing facility?
I mean both as a whole. and its own parts also. Many parts can be corporatized, but Indian Railways as a corporation as a whole also, unless that happens, the people sitting in the railway ministry dictated by DOPT rules and every paper being vetted by some other ministry, that cannot work. It does not lead to effective functioning management.
Yeah, there I agree. You see, our pyramid, which was already quite inverse, has become absolutely unmanageably inverse, as you know, especially after the last upgradation. Well, I have nothing against the upgradation as a career progression of people. But then at some point, pointless induction of class 1 officers was done and so on. Something has to be done about it because we have created only a large number of decision makers on top who don't take any decisions. But anyway, I would, before ending the program, I'll come to both of you once again, 1 minute each, sir. Wish the minister good luck and the country good luck. And what would be your closing comment? Mr. Shukla.
I think Mr. Luthra has made a very important point of corporatization. I would dwell on that because the dedicated freight corridor always is a corporate.
Sir.
Now, this first time that the basic infrastructure of railways has been put under corporation. It is already started.
Yes.
Now we have to see that it delivers. Corporatization has already been used as a tool for dedicated freight corridor, and therefore freedom to freight corridor to deliver as a corporate is very, very crucial. And therefore we should not impose the frills of railways onto the dedicated freight corridor once it is already formed. And I would give example because I was HR in charge of the dedicated freight corridor. So while making business plan of dedicated freight corridor, we ensured that the manpower of dedicated freight corridor is of international benchmark, and therefore dedicated freight corridors has been in their business plan as only 7,000 people for 7,000 route kilometers, unlike railways. So it is already there, and therefore while opening dedicated freight corridor, we must give them freedom to improve their coefficient of business and create new businesses. And that is possible only when we have to do reforms like we do it on roads. What do we do as when we appoint a concessionaire? We only ask concessionaire to maintain the road and collect toll. So these are the basics of the road management when we go for concessionaire. Same thing can happen on dedicated freight corridor. You bring your train, run it on dedicated freight corridor, pay track access charge, and be out of the freight corridor. And this will bring down lot of freedom for the customers to bring their own rolling stock, bring their own locomotive, bring their own wagons, customize the wagons, and develop facilities as they want.
Sir.
So the first step is already taken.
Sir. Yes, sir. So, Mr. Luthra, your last word as a passionate railwayman.
Yes.
To our new minister.
I'm happy that Mr. Shukla mentioned the already existing corporate. Today morning, I read a news item that some member of parliament has requested the minister to take over Konkan Railway back into the railway fold. Now, that is another regressive step. Konkan is a corporation. It should be looking at some sort of privatization in the next 10 years. But here is somebody suggesting that it should be absorbed into the railways. So these are the regressive steps against which the minister must caution himself and apply his mind and see how other railways are run. I'm sure he is aware of that, and take us in that direction and not take us in the backward direction.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Shukla. Thank you, Mr. Luthra. And viewers, we are all passionate railwaymen. We love railways and we would like railways to come back on rails because it's not so much, it's been a bit of a derailed railway. And we will come back to you once again, keenly watching what happens on the railway scenario. Thank you very much. Namaskar.
Thank you.